Hi guys, we're out here today doing another installation again, and this time it's all about pods. So we have our feel-free pod, we have our bonafide pod, and we have our DIY pod. So I'm going to show you very quickly how to put the motor on your bonafide or feel-free pod, and then we're going to cover how to install a DIY pod. And we're going to use a Vibe dry pod for that installation, and we have a Vibe kayak handy here, so we're going to pop that in and show you how that works. When you get your pod adapter, you're going to get a bonafide dry pod, for instance. Inside that pod is going to be a reduced shroud, so you can squeeze your motor into that tighter hole that is for the pod adapter. You have your user guide there to tell you where to go to watch this video, and you're going to get some nuts and bolts for your motor to get onto your adapter. Okay. And of course, you're going to get your J-2 outboard kit. And whether you get it in a kit or separately, you're going to have your kit that opens up with your quick user guide here. Please read that. Lots of good information on there. You have your decal in there. We have our battery, PP378, charger for that battery, and our motor, of course, kill switch, and a small Allen wrench that we're going to need to use to take that shroud off and put the reduced shroud on there. We have our remote, and underneath the remote we have again another set of nuts and bolts for that motor, and a tiny little bit of dielectric grease for you to use on your connectors to prevent corrosion. Okay, so let's get started and put that motor onto that bonafide pod. So whether you have the bonafide pod, the feel-free pod, or the DIY pod, the procedure of putting the motor on the pod is exactly the same in all three applications. Okay, so we're going to do it on the bonafide pod here, so you guys see how that works. Again, like with everything else, we try to keep tools to a minimum, so we just have an adjustable wrench and a Phillips screwdriver for this installation. That's all we really need. The pod comes like this, as is. You can run this wire to either side of your pod, depending on where you want to run it into your kayak. Motor goes onto our adapter there. We can line up our screw holes. Now we want to get these nuts and bolts nice and tight. We don't need to use an impact driver or anything powered, because we are dealing with plastic. But that adjustable wrench or a 7mm wrench will get these plenty tight. Now, before we do anything else, I'm also going to change the back shroud here, because we want that reduced shroud, so it's easier to get this in and out of the dry pod. This is the same procedure you would use if you were trying to clean out your propeller, if you have some seaweed stuck in there, or you just want access to your propeller, or if you want to change your propeller, you still need to do the same thing. You need to open these 3 screws to get to your propeller. This Allen key is included in your J-2 outboard kit. Now, in many applications, like for instance in the Hobie Mirage drives, if you don't change this shroud, you may be able to squeeze the motor in, but you won't be able to take it out, and you'll end up damaging your motor. So it is a good idea to get this on, and there's only really one way that this goes on. And you want to just put those screws on there loosely and then give them a tightening at the end. Because that propeller is so close to the shroud, if you start tightening them one at a time, you will find that the propeller may hit the side of the shroud. So I'm just going to lightly tighten those. Once they're in place, then I can start tightening them up one by one. So there's one, and I'm going to do this one, and there's last but not least. So that's it, guys. That is the installation of a J-2 motor on a bona fide pod. The same procedure for a feel-free pod. Once you have the motor on your pod, installation of the pod onto your kayak is as it is normally. So you drop your pod in, you lock it in the front and back, and you can run your wire. There's lots of room in the front, in the back. You can run the wire up to your kayak and into your battery. I'm going to show you in a second how that's done and how you connect your battery to your motor as well. So now that we have our motor installed on our bona fide and feel-free pod, let's say you have a kayak for which we don't sell a pod adapter for. So I've got a pod here from a Vibe kayak. I've got the Flex pod from Wilderness Kayaks here. So if you wanted to power those pods, you can buy the DIY pod adapter on its own, and that ships with everything you need, even the nuts and bolts, to get one of those pod adapters onto any other pod or virtually any flat surface that you want to get the motor onto. So if you had the bottom of any other boat, or if you were trying to move something else, you could put this adapter on the bottom of anything that has a flat surface. So today I'm going to put this adapter onto this Vibe pod and put the Vibe pod into the Vibe kayak so you see how that works. So we're going to get started, and as the name implies, this is a DIY project. So you do need a few more tools than you normally do with most of our adapters. One of the first things you need is to go to the website and download this template. And this template allows you to put this onto where you want your adapter to be. Drill out those 5mm holes and just quickly and easily put your pod adapter onto where you want to be. So I'm going to cut this out right now. And it doesn't have to be a very clean cut. We're going to make sure we align it onto the pod where we want it to be. So we're going to put this, center this on our pod. Now you may want to use a ruler. I've done this a few times, so I'm pretty comfortable just eyeballing it. But just to get it centered properly, you may want to use a measuring device. Once you have that on there, then it's nice and easy, and we're going to drill our holes now. So there we go. So now that we've drilled our holes, what we want to do is get our adapter on there. So one of the things you want to do, of course, is identify what the front and the back of your pod are. So in this kayak, this is going to be the front of our pod. That's the front of the kayak. So we want the front of the adapter to be on the front of the kayak. So that's important, otherwise you'll go in reverse. So we have our holes, we have our adapter. We do have a backing plate on here we want to take off first. So there's our backing plate. Once our backing plate is off, what we want to do is we do want to put some silicone around these holes just before we put our adapter on. So that way we have a good seal and there's no chance of water getting inside this pod. So again, we have identified that this is the front of our adapter. So we're going to put our pod adapter in like so. And you'll get a little bit of silicone coming out the sides possibly, but we can wipe that off later. Okay, we're going to hold that in place. Now we're going to go to the inside of our pod. We're going to put our backing plate on there. And what we're going to do now is we're going to speed up this video while I put these nuts and bolts on here and get to the end of this. we are done. So there's the inside of our pod adapter, and there's the outside. Of course, again, we want the front here to be pointing to the front of the adapter. Okay, once we have the adapter in place, now we want to put our motor in place. And again, you can run the cable to the right or to the left of this. And we'll speed this up again as well, but just remember, no impact drivers and no power tools, just hand tightening of these screws. That is it. We are done. So we have our motor now on our dry pod. It's sealed because we use that silicone. And on this application, I'm not going to change that back shroud because we have plenty of space here to put that motor in. So there's no need to change that shroud. So we're going to keep the full shroud and keep the full output of the motor on there. So we're going to install this on our kayak now and see what it looks like. All right, so we're going to put our motor into our pod now. So one thing I do know about the Vibe kayak is this pod is very tight in this kayak. So if we don't make a little bit of room for that cable, it's going to be very tough to place this pod. Most of the pods have room for cables to run through or through onto the side. This pod is quite tight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a knife and I'm going to take a tiny bit of this foam off here, right in the middle. Just about half an inch. I'm going to take a little bit of that foam off. Once we take that foam off, we have a little more space for our cable to go through. And I'm going to pass the cable right through the front here. So we go in there. And just make sure that cable falls right onto that opening we just made. And that'll allow us to lock the pod into place a little more easily in our back. And we have our cable here now that'll run to our battery. I'm going to show you guys how to hook this cable into the battery, get your motor powered and on your way. All right, so now we have our pod in place, we have our motor in place, and we have our battery, remote, kill switch, and a bit of dielectric grease that was in your J-2 outboard kit. I'm going to show you guys how to connect that motor to your battery. On your battery, you'll have 3 ports. You'll have your charging port, your auxiliary 12 5-volt port, and our main power port. That's what we're interested in right now. So we're going to get a little bit of that dielectric grease in there. This is really helpful if you're near salt water where you may get some corrosion on those pins. Get our dielectric grease in there. And you'll see that you have 5 pins in there, 3 small and 2 big pins. You want to line up that connector with those pins. But more importantly, you want to line up those 2 small tabs to the little notches that are in that connector. Okay, so we get that on there. Once the tabs are lined up, you'll be able to push this in and turn it about 175 degrees and you'll feel it click into place. Once it's mated, this thing is fully waterproof and it will float. So if you do fall over, your battery will float and it's waterproof. You can put the battery under your seat if you've got space. In this case, we don't because we've got a drawer, or you can put it right under here. Either way, you want to make sure that your kill switch is able to get on the battery and reaches you, so you can put it on your wrist, on your life vest, or on your legs. So if you fall off your kayak, you don't lose your kayak going down the ocean. Your remote can go on your wrist, can sit on your handles or on your paddle, wherever you're more comfortable. And that's about it. That is a full installation of the Bixpy J-2 kit on a pod adapter, on a DIY, on a bona fide, on a feel free. It's all the same. And if you have any other pods from other kayaks like Wilderness and Flex Pod or whatever else, you can do the same exact installation. Thanks for watching and see you on the water.